3 years, I met Neil in Uyu. Before then, I used to follow his tweets on Twitter and Prosper in 2017. And then right about that time, a lot of things was going so wonderfully as a developer. I have over 12 years experience working with PHP, and then a lot too working with Laravel. And so in 2016, I had an opportunity to work with a bank project in Brazil, and working on that project gave me a lot of leverage, a lot of lessons to learn, a huge opportunity, and a lot of money too. So I was right. At the end of the day, it has to somehow boil down to money in your pocket. If not, it won't make sense. So I was working on a project. I was the one who started the project from 0 users to, in fact, it was my first time of building an app, and within 7 days, we already did 5,000 users. And it was crazy. It was crazy. I wasn't prepared for that. This is 2016. I wasn't prepared for that kind of skill. By then, I just knew that you just build your app and then it should just work. So, by the time we started hitting 5,000 users, and then, man, it was crazy. I knew nothing about optimization. I knew nothing about building for scale. I had so much sleepless nights. It was crazy, but it was a great experience. Like, I learned so fast that period, having to work on a platform of that nature. So by the time this was October, November, by the time we reached November 30, we were already doing 15,000, 20,000, 50,000 users. And then by early December 2016, we had done 100,000 users. So my phone was always buzzing because the app will break sometimes, and then users are unable to log in, and everybody's calling. In fact, at some point, I know that I got to a point where I was stuck, and I sent a message to Prosper. And then by the time we were trying to debug, he saw that it was something else. Prosper blocked me. It was funny. It was funny. But man, it was crazy. It was crazy. He helped me out a lot later. I think he was busy at the time, so he helped me out himself. I had a friend of mine that works for Google, Silicon Valley, Goke Polemo. He has left Google by now. He helped me a whole lot. Asked me to give him my VPS. Then I was using a VPS hosting, login details, add him to the SSH and all of that. And so basically, he helped me fix optimizations. You know, don't blame me. There were lots of places I was using wildcard queries everywhere, like select everything. So, man, it works on my local system, so it should work on the cloud too, right? So, it was a very amazing experience, having to learn, having to understand that it works for you doesn't mean it's going to work for 1,000 users, it's going to work for 10,000 users. And so, when you're building your applications, you need to begin to imagine, okay, this application, at what scale is it going to grow? What are the possibilities, okay? So if it's an app that you're just going to build for yourself, a couple of friends, okay, you can do it anyhow. But by the time you know that, okay, this app, there's a huge possibility that it's going to get in the hands of lots and lots of users, then you have to start thinking your code right. You need to start thinking your architecture right. So, okay, so that went on. By ending of 2016, we already did 500,000 users. By January, I was already doing 1 million. And it was just myself, and I alone. Like, I was an entire tech team. So whenever I go anywhere, I'll give a talk and say, myself and my team were working on this, we're working on that. But the team was just myself and I. And the organization was very gracious. Basically, I was still growing. They were growing too. This was the first time they were doing something of this nature. And they tried to make funds available as soon as possible whenever something needed to be done. So the application grew. I got invitation from Meltwater School of Entrepreneurship to come and mentor some developers in Ghana. So I got to travel around a bit. And then all of a sudden, money was coming in, man. you just make a complaint, oh, I want to do this, and then alert. And then you want to do this, you get an alert. And then I got my first car, 2017. And then I represent Heptapixels. And so let me just do my introduction again. My name is Christian Jumbo, and I'm the founder of Heptapixels, a software development company. I have over 12 years of experience in business and software development. I'm a mentor for Facebook Developer Circles, Google Developer Group, and Google Business Group And I'll say I'm a foodie. I love food. I love food a whole lot. So basically, 2017, everything was going well. Everything was amazing. There was at that point I began to know what the power of money is. Like, there's nothing you want that, and at that point, there's not, when you have money, you're not too hungry. But then, so I got my office. We got a full building. We got a series of floors for the office. I want to have a cool office and all of that. And it was pretty amazing. My dad was like, man, why are you burning money at this rate? And I'm like, there's money. So then I got my first reality check. My mom was diagnosed of kidney failure. And I was like, okay. I began to start learning a lot about, okay, how does this work? And then while we're still battling that, my dad suffered stroke. So that's when reality hit me very, very hard. So all the money, everything was pumped into a particular place. We're doing dialysis like crazy. I don't know if anybody here knows what dialysis is. Hello? Okay, so we're doing 3 dialysis every week. Each dialysis means blood transfusion. So we need 2 pints of blood for each dialysis. And in Uyo, where I live, a dialysis cost about 55,000. So I was doing 3 every week. Then 2 pints of blood is about, Uyo is about 11,000, 12,000, between 11,000 and 15,000 a pint. So 2 pints, that's about 30,000 per dialysis session. So 30,000 times 3, 90,000. You have about 50,000 times 3 every week, 150,000 every single week. And now there's something about us developers. We have this energy. When you, in fact, I don't know, for me, I have this excitement when I meet something that is tough, because I feel like nothing can put me down. You can't put me down. So when there is an error, I remember one time I had a client in Port Harcourt, and the client were battling with an issue. And then, in fact, we had finished the project, and then when we were ready, testing and ready to hand over, the client changed something major about his business model. And that meant there was going to be a lot of changes. So during that period, we had lots of errors. And the client was like, okay, let's step out. Let's go catch air and then have fun. And everybody got ready to step out. They came back. I was still there trying to battle, because we don't like to see issues that we can't fix. Okay? As a developer, I believe almost everybody here should share that sentiment. Whenever you find yourself in a situation that is tough, you want to battle yourself out of that situation. Most times you feel like you shouldn't stand up until that issue is fixed. So here I was with my mom. Mind you, my mom is like my sweetheart, my girlfriend. And she's battling an illness that I wish it were code. I would code the solution out. But I'm not a medical person. It's not my field. And I began to do lots of reading, lots of trying to find out, is there a solution? Okay, I now discovered, hey, the solution to the problem is flying her abroad. Now, by this time, I handed over the project to, they now had the tech team in place, so I handed over, and I was running my own startup full time. I had staff. So that means, even though money was coming, but it wasn't coming at that rate again. So I had staff that were working. We got a setup. We had paid internship, like interns in Uyo come to, and we pay them every month to teach them how to work. So it was crazy. And started battling that. My mom going to the hospital, going here, going there. People recommend lots of places. I mean, when you get into situations, you get to see, receive lots of advices from lots of places. So during that period, my dad got ill, and then my dad just drove himself to the hospital, and then the next thing was we couldn't hear from him for like 4 or 5 hours. And then someone called and like, is this Christian Jumbo? I said, yes. Hey, can you come over to the hospital? It's an emergency. So by the time I went to the hospital, my dad wasn't moving. It was as if he was dead. So started spending money, moving around, and then he recovered, but he couldn't move. So he was awake, and then was spending money, he couldn't move. My mom suffered kidney failure, was in the hospital too. And then I have siblings that are very young. So that means that the whole stress was on me. So between 2017, November, to my mom died in November 2018. So imagine dialysis 3 times every week. For how many months? My dad recovered. And thankfully, my dad is alive today. He's doing well. And but then the experience was crazy. Like nothing had ever prepared me for that. Nothing. In fact, there's this pride we have as developers. Even sometimes it's difficult to take criticism. So you work on a project and somebody's telling you, especially if you're a startup. How many people are running their startup here? Let me see. Okay, new. No other person is running like you have an app up, you're running your own development agency. Francis. Okay, so for startup founders, it's even more difficult because you defend your startup like it's your baby. So when somebody's saying this will not work, you want to fight the person and all of that. So there's this level of pride when somebody's saying that, hey, this thing you're doing is the wrong way. There's this pride that we have as developers that you want to argue why your own route is better, your own way is better. So it takes a very strong level of humility, a very strong level of commitment to learning to be able to stop and listen to what anybody's saying. And so with that pride, when you face difficulties, you just think that you just muscle your way, okay. Sometimes you feel that throwing money at the problem hard enough or so much money is going to solve the problem. So basically, up until that point, nothing prepared me for all of that. And last year, I also had a couple of young developers, and that also had 1 or 2 things that they were going through, and I saw that they had it very, very rough. And so I try as much as possible to want to share what I want to share with you today to developers. I'm not going to talk about code, okay? What I'm talking about is going to be real life experience. Some of them you may know, some of them you just be hearing about for the first time. So basically, as developers, having the ability to build things out of nothing. So today, the business guy comes up to you and says, okay, this is what I want to do. Or your project manager comes up to you, or your business developer comes up to you and tells you, okay, this is what, we have a client that wants to do this, that. And at that point, that thing does not exist. But then you're going to be the one to bring it to life. You have this God-like feeling. Okay? In fact, depending on your importance in your organization, sometimes you feel like without you, the organization cannot go anywhere. So, we begin to feel infallible. So as a result of this, nothing prepares us for hard failure. That this is because we've succeeded so much that by the time you meet failure, it's strange. By the time you face tough times, it's kind of strange. You've not been there before. Okay? So the goal of this entire talk is to prepare you, to open your mind up to, look, failure is real. Tough situation can happen to anybody. Okay? So just keep an open mind and then have the following things we're going to share in mind in case you have anybody that's going through that, or even yourself, you find yourself going through all of that. So this quote is a very important quote to me by J.K. Rowling. We know who J.K. Rowling is. How many people have watched Harry Potter? One of my my most loved movies. So she battled with depression. She attempted suicide a couple of times. She said, rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life. So after battling with depression a number of times, after going through a whole lot, at some point, things got better. But before it got better, it was worse. It was terrible. So when I was going through a whole lot, I stumbled upon this article that 39% of tech professionals struggle with tough situations and depression. Like, you may not be going through it now, okay? You may not be going through it, but there are people going through it, and it's real, like very real. And the reason is, There are a lot of people working remotely, so it happens to be that you're working with yourself. Like, it's very lonely. The development coding can be very lonely. Can be very lonely. That's why what I do is I try to attend as many tech events because I find out I don't fit in other places. So I try to go to meetups and then try to associate, try to get to know everybody, and then that means I have a community of people around me. I have friends that I can chat with that I know that, okay, they're doing what I do, and they most likely will understand what I'm going through or what I understand. Okay, so 39% of persons we had, we had somebody drink sniper, like literally, and take his own life. Okay, so dealing with failure and tough situations. So first of all, whether you like it or not, at some point you'd have to deal with a tough situation. It may not be as terrible as mine. It may even be worse. It may just be as simple as moving to the next level in your career. It can be your own tough situation. I mean, you find yourself in a particular state, and then it's looking like nothing is coming, no matter the efforts you put in. Ada shared something a while back. Ada, she works with Google now, that at some point she was going to every interview, and it was looking like it was only hard they were rejected. And so it may just be what you're going through at that point as a developer. For those that have startups, I was hoping I was going to meet a lot of persons running their startups here. Running your startup is extreme sports. It's crazy. You switch between sad moments and happy moments like almost on a weekly or if not daily basis. So it's really, really crazy. It's really crazy. So the first thing to do when you're going through those moments is to acknowledge that this is happening. So it's not to live in denial and say, okay, hey, I'm a developer, I am a demigod, my father is Obasanjo, or I'm from Buhari Cabal, and all of that. And so the first thing you need to do is acknowledge that this is happening. So acknowledge the situation. Don't live in denial. Feel the pain. Pain deserves to be felt. Don't try to avoid the pain. You're only going to elongate the situation. I can't count the number of times I've locked myself in and cry like as I big rich like this. Cry, and then there's something about crying. Crying releases some negative chemical. I'm not a doctor, but I've read this up, and I've had this discussion with some doctor friends. Crying releases some negative toxins, like chemicals from the body, and then it helps to relieve stress. So when you have the urge to cry, when you're going through something very painful, cry. Cry. You not be Iron Man. You're not Superman. Cry. You're permitted to cry. You're permitted to fail. You're permitted to go through tough situations. Acknowledge it. Okay? You shouldn't try to, try to avoid, maybe try to dodge. Face it head on. And then you stand a chance to face it and go through it. Okay? Now, apart from that, you have to remember a couple of things. Now, when you're going through the down spiral, when you're going through tough situations, it's very easy to forget the things you can do. In fact, it's very easy for self-doubt to come up. You begin to doubt yourself. You begin to think if there's any possibility of you coming out of it. So it is very important that you remember how far you've come. Okay? Something happened a couple of days ago, and I was sharing with my fiancée. I went somewhere and something wanted to get me upset, but then instead of getting upset, I had to remind myself where I came from. I'm coming from a background that is very crazy, like very crazy. Teaching myself computer, I had to be trekking to school to save my transport. I lived in Calabar and Oyo almost all my life. So by that time, maybe you guys here in Lagos, you had access to computers. We didn't. You can, in a whole city, you may have just 3 computer centers in a whole city. And so I'll have to trek to school, secondary school by then, and then save my transport to pay for time in a cyber cafe to teach myself. And then after that, I was robbed at gunpoint. I lost my laptop, my phone, and then I did a job for someone. I didn't even start the job. I collected money. I was robbed of that money that day. So I try to remember where I'm coming from. So I believe that as developers, you also have your own story. You're coming from somewhere. You didn't just start where you are. You're coming from a tough place, and you're making it easy for yourself as you grow. So the first thing you need to remember is that, I have been through this before. Yes, it may not be at this scale, but I've been through. For us Christians, I don't know whether we have any Muslims here. There's something we like to say. We say that when David spoke to Saul, talking about facing Goliath, he said something. He said that he had faced the lion and the bear before. So what this does is it gives you a track record to build your confidence. That's what it does. So remember where you're coming from. Do not forget that you're not coming from where you are right now. You came from somewhere that was tougher than where you are. Okay? And then another thing you need to remember is you have to remember to give yourself credit for the things you've done. It boosts your self-confidence. Don't try to be, yes, it's good to be humble, but don't be too humble when you're going through. Remember the things you have done. Remember, I bought the land in Wode. I bought a car out of nothing. I was able to send my siblings to school. I was able to do this. I was able to do that. And so if out of all of this, I was able to do all of that, then in this situation, I can come out of it. Okay? So, understand that every situation in life, there are cycles. Okay, you have the cycle where you get to enjoy and flex. And there are also going to be times where you get to feel sad. And then finally, what you need to remember is that every challenge presents an opportunity for growth. Okay? So every single challenge gives you an opportunity. I have learned financial management in about 3 years. Like, the way I was living before, if you just come to me and then I could just burn money on things that were unnecessary. Because I was well paid, I was having any money at a decent rate. So, but after going through all of this, I've learned to save. I've learned to know that, look, that you have the money coming now doesn't mean you should spend it all now. So that challenge you're going through, even if it's a confidence crisis, it is it's an opportunity for you to learn. It's an opportunity for you to grow. So do not forget that. Remember that whenever you're going through your own season of tough time. Okay, then you need to accept a couple of things. You need to accept that some situations are beyond your control. So a couple of times when I go to the hospital to see my mom, I kept fighting that, man, this thing. Yes, I could not afford to fly her abroad at that point because the money was not coming like in bulk. I was spending it. When I say that we spent 50K on dialysis 3 times every week, it was not that we had the 50K in bulk. So it could just be that by the time we are paying for the first one, I don't have money yet for the next one. So by the time the next one is due, that money will come in, or by the time I do the first, the next money will come in, will just come in maybe for the next 2 dialysis sessions. So at some point, I had to stop and tell myself, look, this is not going anywhere. And I had to prepare myself for the reality that my mom was going to die someday. And that someday is not too far off. Someday soon. So I remember that night very well. I went to see my mom and I saw that her condition was not improving. And then I finished everything, talked her in, prayed for her. My younger sister was with her. I gave them some money, and then I came back in. They were expecting that I was going to stay the night. I actually stayed, but I left, came back to the car, and then closed the door, wind up everywhere, and I cried. That was the night I accepted that there is a huge possibility that my mom was going to die soon. And so, when you accept that this is happening, when you accept that, man, this situation is beyond your control, it helps ease the process of healing. It helps ease the process of coming out of it. You begin to ask yourself, okay, so what next? What do I do next? And so you're setting up yourself for frustration when you focus your time and energy on things you can't control. Okay? So even as you code, there are things you cannot control. Like you can't control the device your user is going to be visiting your platform with. Can you control that? Hello? Can you control the device your user is going to be visiting your platform with? You can't. So you have to understand and accept that there are situations that are always going to be beyond your control. And as a developers, that is usually very difficult to accept. You want to feel that you can do everything every time. It's not possible. You can't do everything every time. So you need to accept that. You need to accept your new reality. And then I have an image of metamorphosis. I know they've been teaching us this thing for secondary school, or I don't know what the cycle is like, but then I can't remember what the cycle is like, but I know that at each stage, you see that the butterfly is totally different from the previous stage. So that's the same thing with going through tough situations. So So the next thing you need to do is to forgive. So when I went through all of that, uh, it was crazy. I began to blame myself that I didn't save enough money for the situation on ground. Began to blame myself that I was not earning enough to solve that problem. I began to blame my dad that, hey, you're the father, you're supposed to. That's not that I confronted him in my mind. I was like, man, you can't be a father and then you don't get money. How far now? How far? So, but then at that point, you need to learn to forgive. Forgive. You can't really go through a difficult time when your every thought is how upset you are with yourself, okay, and others around you. So, dwelling on the past decisions you've made only allows those decisions to keep defining you. So when you're still there blaming yourself, you're never going to move forward. So you have to accept, yes, I made this mistake. Now, how do I get out of here? Okay? So you need to forgive yourself. And then forgiving yourself means you're ready to move on. Okay? So, and then once all of that happens, the next thing you need to do is to move. You need to take that action. You need to move on. When you finally let go of the past, something better comes along. Have you lost a phone that you loved so much? How many people have lost phone here? Okay, now the phone you're using, is it not better than the previous phone? So I lost my HP Spectre, but the next thing I got was a MacBook. You understand? So you have to move. When you move, better things come along. So don't allow the pain and guilt to tie you down. I know it's not easy. Sometimes you have to deal with the ghost of, once in a while the memories come back, and I try to fight. It took a while to get out of there, but I had to make conscious effort, okay, to move out. Don't lose yourself trying to hold on to whatever happened. Move on. Try to take that action. List out the things you need to do. By the time you accept the situation and then you've decided, okay, what next? List out the things you need to do. I moved on. Heptapixels has a number of products that we're launching, and we are growing. I had to move on from that point. I said, okay, yes, I lost my mom. She meant a whole lot to me, but then she's gone. She's gone. I can't bring her back. So let's grow. Let's keep moving. So you don't give up. So in summary, here are the 5 things you need to do whenever you're faced with a challenge. Acknowledge your circumstance. Remember where you're coming from. Accept your new reality. Forgive yourself. Move on. Thank you very much.